Coming up next on Arizona Horizons Journalists Roundtable, lawmakers restore funding for career and technical education, and the governor signs legislation that reforms police and fire pensions. The Journalists Roundtable is next on Arizona Horizon.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizons Journalists Roundtable. I'm Ted Simons. Joining us tonight, Aaliyah Rao of the Arizona Republic, Howard Fisher of Capital Media Services, and Mike Sunnix of the Phoenix Business Journal. Governor Ducey signed legislation this week that restores almost all of the $30 million in cuts targeting joint technical education districts. These are JTEDs signed by the governor. We've been kind of monitoring this. No easy task, huh?
No, it got a little dramatic this week, but really because of internal politics, not because of any issue with the underlying legislation, which made it a little fun for us and probably a little concerning for the JTED folks. So basically, the House passed the bill first and thought that that would be the one that went to the governor, but the Senate took their bill, amended their own version, and then sent their own version back to the House to go to the governor, and the House freaked out.
Freaked out is a nice way of putting it. The House decided, first they weren't going to do anything. They were having this wonderful staring contest. Nobody was blinking. And then the House said, okay, we'll send up your version. We have another little amendment to put on. And it's one of these wonderful legislative intent clauses, which has no legal meaning, but becomes part of the law, which says, we want everybody to know that these people cared about it, to vote on it first, and listed 57 of their House members now as part of the law. And then also point out in the law, we passed it first. Nanny, nanny, boo, boo.
The people's work. They're doing the people's work there with that kind of language.
Who cares? Besides the people that signed, who cares?
The people and elected officials within the caucus cared. Other than that, nobody else cared. I
Well,
mean, the end result was what people wanted, and that's what the schools wanted and their interests wanted. But that type of stuff is usual stuff you see in parliaments and legislatures where it's a contest.
But what happens is, Don Shooter actually has been championing this.
Senator from Yuma?
Senator from Yuma, who would like to either stay in the Senate or go to the House, depending on what happens with his fight with Steve Montenegro. But he's been championing. He'd like the credit. It was his name on the bill. The House bill was signed by everyone. Well, just so happens the first name is a guy named Chris Ackerley, who's a Republican in a Democrat district. So he becomes the prime sponsor, which means if the House bill goes up, he gets to go back to Tucson and say, look what I brought you. And that's what this is all about.
This was a popular move. Republicans across the board, business folks, everybody saw the cuts to the technical schools and kind of wondered, why are we doing that? And we have this surplus. And so I think there was a lot of consensus, and Howie's right. It's a thing for people to tout. But this is one of the things that is the trappings of office. I want to be the top sponsor of this, and this is the type of personalities we get serving in politics.
But am I the only one, and I know I'm not, who sees the irony of these folks literally falling all over each other to take credit for doing something that corrects what they did in the last session?
Yes, basically. In the end, I mean, Ducey kind of jumped on board at the end also. He issues a press release saying, I told you guys this was really important when I did my State of the State. This is great. I'm so glad you finally did this. Well, neglecting to mention that his budget, included a program that would have given them barely a third of what they had cut the year before.
You guys have a really long memory. This was only, last year?
Yeah. Well, and the point that you made was made by Eric Meyer, who's the House Democratic leader. And he said, guys, you don't get credit for igniting the school on fire and then, you put it out and look what we did.
And we had Senate President Andy Biggs, as far as the tit for tat there, the little staring contest, detente, whatever it was there, the Cold War between the houses, called it bizarro and extremely out of the ordinary.
Yeah, it's just a competition between the two chambers on something that really doesn't matter to the regular folks. But maybe give them some credit that they saw what they did last year. They have a surplus, and now they're correcting something that maybe wasn't the wisest move.
Okay, yeah, it is kind of nice to see people actually say, hey, wait a minute, I don't know if they actually put it into these words. We may have made a mistake. I don't know if the word mistake was used, but at least they're not being called flip-floppers.
Well, no. Well, what happened last year, you remember when we were sitting around the table, they were in such a rush to get out of there.
The speed of business, Howie.
Speed of business. Hey, we've got $1 billion deficit, the governor said. We have to cut. We've got to cut $99 million from the universities. We got to cut $30 million from JTEDs. We got to, be very parsimonious with K-12. Well, all of a sudden, after they left, they realized, remember that $1 billion deficit? We ended the budget year with $325 million in the bank, plus revenues this year are running at least $220 million above estimates. And everyone said, wait a second, we did what? Because you rushed us out of here?
All right, so that's done. Police and fire pension reform is kind of done too. I mean, there's still a vote that has to be taken on this for a certain aspect of it. But again, we're talking the states involved. Cities have been calling for the state to do something forever. Sounds like the state's done something.
They have. I mean, they've spent, Senator Debbie Lesko spent the past year kind of working with the cities, working with the union folks on how do we fix this issue. There's not enough money. These pensions are sucking an enormous amount of money out of city revenues, and sort of how do we fix it without impacting, the folks who are getting these benefits. And some people have said it's kind of a small change, but it's a long-term change. I mean, it's something that's going to take 30 years for us to really see the impacts
And that's the key. The problem you've got is a constitutional amendment that says you cannot impair pension benefits, which is part of the reason for the vote. We'll talk about that in a sec. Most of these changes affect only the folks who are going to be hired after July 1st. We're going to go ahead and say you've got to contribute more toward your pension. We're going to offer you a defined contribution plan. You may have to work longer to get a full benefit. And we're going to cap the amount of your salary that can be considered for pension. Now, that gets you, over the long term, out. Now, what they're trying to do is they want to amend the Constitution to say, right now, existing employees and existing retirees are frozen in. They get a basically cost of living, depending on how the pension does. It's been 4% a year for a number of years. This would cap it at 2% a year. And the police and firefighters signed off on this, most of them. There's one organization that hasn't, and said, look, we recognize that if we break the fund, we're all in trouble. I mean, this is a fund that has $12 billion in liabilities and $6 billion in assets. Even a journalist like me can figure out that this is a problem.
Yeah, there's some mutual benefit there. They're incremental. They're not taking too much away. But there's some mutual fear because if the Republican conservative legislature puts up on the ballot that really goes against what the unions want, that they could get screwed. If the unions beat this, when they're pretty powerful, especially in cities like Phoenix, if they beat this, does it tear down their reforms, and what does it do to the Prop 123 also?
I was going to say this is set for May 17th. This is not going to be on the same ballot as Prop 123.
It is, which could have some benefits. I mean, you get the union guys out there supporting something that's on the ballot. That's a powerful voting bloc to get out there.
So, Howie, the unions, as you say, for the most part, support this.
Yes.
There are a couple of groups, maybe one or two, that are not so crazy about it. But again, they understand. It sounds like there were some conservative lawmakers, though, that thought, this isn't good enough.
Well, there's always somebody who believes we can get a better deal. And look, in this legislature, there's no shortage of times they've rolled over unions. But the fact is, as Debbie Lesko said, look, is this everything I would have wanted? No. Is this the best we can do? Because the firefighters are a fairly potent force out there, and they can turn out voters, and they can turn out voters in your district to say, do you really want to vote for somebody because he's basically bankrupting your fire department?
Debbie Lesko, Senator Lesko, this a pretty big achievement for her, wasn't it?
It's huge. I mean, she spent, like I said, a tremendous amount of time. She was pacing the halls the last few days, out there on her phone nonstop, back and forth with House folks and lobbyists, and sort of trying to make sure everybody stayed on the same page. There was some panic as the infighting was going on over the JTED bill about would this one kind of get sucked into that, and it seemed not to. So it got done.
Well, it does work against the narrative of that we have at the legislature, that they're all about wedge issues, that they pick on cities, that they pick on unions, that they don't compromise. And in this, they did. But I do think there are probably going to be some conservatives that are looking at it and say, well, if the unions like this, maybe we should have done something a little more, a little stronger.
All right. The death of Justice Antonin Scalia. In Arizona's redistricting case, this is kind of interesting because there had been some thought that, let's talk about the case to begin with, what the Republicans are claiming the redistricting commission did, why they're complaining about it, why this has reached the Supreme Court, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. This is about the legislative districts, unlike the congressional one that came to the Supreme Court last year. The Independent Redistricting Commission, if you would divide up the state among 30 equal districts, you'd have about 220,000 people per district. Well, turns out there are some districts of 231,000, some districts of 212, And it turns out that the overpopulated districts are packed, so to speak, with Republicans. The underpopulated is packed with Democrats. The argument is that you did that for political reasons. The commission says, well, we did it to comply with the Voting Rights Act. We can't dilute minority voting strength. And they say it was legitimate. And in fact, a 3-judge panel here in Phoenix the majority found that was the case. So they argued in December back in the Supreme Court, and on the question of A, is politics legitimate? And B, what does one man, one vote fit in? Now, Mark Brnovich is there defending the Republicans, or prosecuting as the case may be, along with the Republicans, along for Secretary of State, and says, you cannot have unequal districts. Doesn't matter whether it's Voters' Rights Act or anything like that. And the thinking was that if Scalia, who fashions himself as an originalist, would say, yeah, one man, one vote means one man, one vote, and he could have been the deciding vote.
He could have been a deciding vote. It could have been a 5-4 vote or not. The fact remains he will not be a vote at all here, which means it could wind up 4-4, which means the lower court holds, which means you got to wait, what, till 2020?
Yeah, that's what everybody expects now. And you're going to see this with other cases too, immigration, the executive orders, a lot of other cases where there's kind of an even split, you're going to go with the lower court. The appeals court in some cases, that's the Ninth Circuit in a lot of cases, not this one. That kind of benefits, goes against the Republicans in a lot of cases here in Arizona in the West. So yeah, I think 4-4 is kind of what people are kind of expecting now.
And it doesn't set any precedents, which is the interesting thing, which raises the question of, well, can we try again after we have a new justice?
Yes, and can they?
Well, theoretically, you'd probably have to start over again
bump
with
it back down again, wouldn't they?
Bump it back down. Now, of course, all this may change. There's some bills in the legislature to change the makeup of the Independent Redistricting Commission, to have its members elected, or perhaps add independents. There's a whole set of things going on in the background. I have a feeling that we're going to look at the lines the way they are now, and they're going to run this way through 2020.
I was going to say, you only got 2 more elections till 2020 anyway, correct?
Well, actually, the 16, 18, and 20.
So 2020 the 2020 election would not be affected by the new IRC?
No, because what happens is you have to have the decennial census first.
Right.
Those numbers come out in 2021.
Okay.
And
all right.
so
So
that would be
three
3 more elections.
And then we start the same fight over.
Yes, and then whoever gets the advantage will say that it's great, and whoever doesn't get the advantage will try and take it as far to court. All right, 3 new attempts against abortion and abortion providers in the legislature. It looks like these have passed a committee here. Well, what are we talking about?
They're pretty narrow. I mean, you have one that deals with you cannot buy or sell aborted fetuses. And this stems from the Planned Parenthood videos we saw over the summer and kind of controversy about that. Basically, everybody agrees this isn't happening in Arizona, but it was introduced by the Center for Arizona Policy. It's passed the committee, and they're kind of moving forward with it, saying we just want to make sure it's not really happening. And this is for research purposes usually, and we'll kind of see what happens with that. There was another one that dealt with Planned Parenthood getting money from state employees. So you can put on your paycheck, how you want money designated. And this gave a certain amount of money to Planned Parenthood. The governor had already stripped them off, and this kind of just puts it into writing, saying you cannot donate money to these folks. It turns out it's not a lot of money. Basically, they said they did a fundraiser off of this and raised significantly more than they ever had gotten from the state employees.
And the third one is at the RU 486, correct? It kind of limits. Are we going back to FDA guidelines here? You must follow FDA guidelines?
And this goes back to the lawsuit we had from a couple years ago on almost exactly the same law. And the court said the legislature can't do that. You can't limit how things can be done. But they've come back and tweaked the wording, basically. And said this is a real technical change, which it kind of is. It's sort of a legal change, but they're trying to get it back on the books.
But what's important is there were 2 lawsuits against this thing that said you cannot use RU 486 except by the FDA label, which is 7 weeks, versus the 9 weeks that Planned Parenthood does it by. This state court lawsuit dealt with the fact of can you tie the state law to the FDA label. This fixes that. Meanwhile, the Ninth Circuit has already enjoined enforcement of the law pending trial. They basically said it interferes with the rights of women to exercise their constitutional rights to terminate a pregnancy. It doesn't promote women's health. Now, that lawsuit was put on hold because the fact, it's already been voided here. So if the trial judge back in the state level says, okay, we think the law is now legal, we go back to the Ninth Circuit for a full-blown trial.
I think what Howie just basically said is these are all headed for court anyway.
Absolutely, and we're the abortion, the Right to Life folks, the anti-abortion folks down there are a very successful lobby. I mean, they get a lot of stuff passed, especially since Janet Napolitano left under Brewer and under Ducey. They get a lot of stuff passed, and this can work its way through the federal courts, and this can be kind of a laboratory for other states to see what works, what kind of anti-abortion, what kind of restrictions, and they're always trying to kind of move the puck per se, restricting access to reproductive rights.
One footnote on this, 2 other federal circuit courts have basically upheld a lot of these restrictions. There was a Ninth Circuit that went the other way, and the argument was, well, we'll get the Supreme Court to resolve it. Well,
guess what?
Now we're back
Yes.
to the 4-4 Supreme
The Ninth
Court.
Circuit is an ersatz Supreme Court until they get that, and who knows when that will be.
And you'll see social conservatives in the Republican primary, in the presidential race, talk about these types of things. At state levels, these things are going to go through the federal courts, and they'll try to play up folks like Ted Cruz, who are very stridently anti-abortion, as an argument to say this is why we need this type of person in the White House. This is why we need our voters to turn out, because we're going to maybe have a different Supreme Court who can tip the scales in cases like abortion.
All right. The state has investigated, I guess the state ombudsman investigated Department of Child Safety, some staffers over there, and this is a little bit confusing, saying that they had to get parental consent to interview children in certain cases. And you would think that if an investigator is interviewing a child by way of some sort of problem, the last person you would want around getting permission is the parent. What's going on here?
Well, and it does get a little bit technical. There's no issue with interviewing a child without a parent there in cases of abuse. These specifically deal with neglect cases, and this actually stemmed from a child who was interviewed in relation to a case involving another child, a relative. They were all living in the same house, but it wasn't this child's parents who were under investigation. I think it was I don't recall, an aunt or an uncle, something like that was under investigation. So it's very indirect. So the ombudsman is saying you have got to have the parents there in cases of neglect. The DCS is saying, no, there's another part of state statute that says we're fine. Like you said, that doesn't make any sense. Why would we have these parents there when we're potentially talking about them?
Yes.
And so there's some confusion. The legislature, I'm guessing, is going to kind of have to get involved at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like DCS was not amused with the findings, and they want the Attorney General to figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah, I mean, the agency has a lot of problems. We know all the problems they've had with morale and turnover, and there's these horrible cases where they drop the ball. All right, we all know about those. But they get so many mixed messages: funding, pay, rules of engagement. If you want to put it in Republican terms, how do they interview someone? Does that make any common sense that even in a neglect case, are the parents who may be part of this or accused of something get access, have to approve? Can they intimidate the kids beforehand? The viewers don't need to move very far to see the lack of common sense in this. And the legislature, there's folks down at the legislature, the Senate president, others, who don't always send the best messages on enforcement to the agency. They always kind of take the other side of protecting parental rights in worst case scenarios of the government coming in and yanking kids out.
And we should mention that Senate President Andy Biggs said some of these investigations can be like star chambers, which is not a very nice thing to say regarding the investigations. Doesn't show a lot of confidence there. But again, just to be clear, in cases of abuse, in cases of abandonment, you don't need to interview, you get the parental consent. No. But when you're talking neglect.
Well, neglect can take a lot of forms. The problem is you get complaints of neglect. Johnny shows up at school without lunch. Teacher is a mandatory reporter, calls police, calls DCS. All of a sudden you have a neglect investigation going on. And it's a kind of tricky balance, gee, Johnny, why didn't you have lunch? Mom didn't make me lunch. Well, how often didn't Mom make you lunch? Well, sometimes she has to sleep in. Well, does Mom sleep a lot? Well, sometimes Mom comes home late, and you can see how this could snowball, particularly if the child being interviewed is 5. And so it's a delicate balance in there. But it goes to what Mike was talking about, this thing we keep talking about as public policy. Do you err on the side of protecting the child at every instance, that you take the child the moment you've got a problem, or do you err on the side of presuming that the family is to be preserved when at all possible?
And that pendulum swings back and forth all the time.
Well, you know, this hits morale. These people make what, $36,000 a year. They go wait tables for more. They got big caseloads, and you have one of the top lawmakers in the state talking about star chambers, which seems a little out there to me.
Okay. Howie, I guess next July 4th, the legislature has its way. You won't have to stand on your roof to get aerial fireworks. You might be able to buy them and shoot them off right there in your backyard.
Exactly. This is a fascinating issue that's been going on. Prior to 2005, you couldn't even buy those little party poppers because, oh my God, the world will end. Well, then they passed that. Then in 2010, the industry came in and said, if you give us sparklers and ground smoke devices, we'll be satisfied. Well, here it is, 2016. Well, now we need firecrackers and we need what they call keg mortars. These large devices are preloaded with perhaps a dozen and a half little rockets, and you light them up.
Did you say keg mortars?
Keg, K-E-G
We're fighting
mortars.
ISIS.
Boy, what could possibly go wrong with those, Howie?
And they shoot up 100 feet in the air. Well, to your point of what could go wrong, we had the Deputy Scottsdale Fire Marshal in to tell us exactly what could go wrong. But there is a belief that this is one of those nanny state issues, and this is the same arguments we hear over and over again. And the fact is that in many states, look, you drive over to Deming, you see the huge signs. You can buy stuff to blow stuff up here.
But I think the fire officials, and I think they're getting a little tired of coming because this issue constantly comes up, and they constantly have to go down there and say, we live in a desert, and in July it's really dry out there. What's the fascination with everyone being able to shoot off rockets all over the place?
This is a personal rights issue. And that's 100% what it's about. You should have the right to do these things. You should have the right to celebrate your country on 4th of July. There's a song about it.
Even if it burns down the entire
But,
entire
they had all kinds of great statistics about how, we didn't see an increase in fires. Did you know that more children are injured by pencils during July than fireworks?
I had absolutely no idea.
I didn't know that either.
Yes,
Apparently
go
that's
go
the
load
case.
a pencil into a keg mortar and see what happens.
Well, it's a slippery slope thing, and it keeps the lobbyists, right? Each year they get one firework included and stuff, and there's a very influential pro-fireworks lobby. And we have a legislature that wants to allow handguns into basically every building in the state, so why can't we have keg mortars?
And that patriotism thing, I swear, Sonny Borelli, who's a lawmaker from Havasu City, was citing the Star-Spangled Banner and the rocket's red glare.
Fireworks?
The rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air.
Fort McHenry, come on.
Yeah, I've been to Fort McHenry. I've seen the place.
And he said, it's the sound of freedom.
Is that what he said?
He said, it's the sound
Freedom
of
isn't free, right?
So what happens if the neighbor of Sonny Borelli's, a rocket comes up and comes down on his roof, and all of a sudden his, insurance, and that's what insurance is for?
That's what insurance is for. But here's the tricky part, as Mike points out, you can buy guns, you can buy flares. There are so many things you can buy now. It's sort of like they're trying to outlaw, they're trying to make nunchucks legal. The fact is nunchucks are illegal, but you can walk down the street with a lead pipe, and our laws are, let's just say, a little confusing.
So you're going to light those little snails next 4th of July? Those are pretty exciting.
Fisher's Estate out there, the Capital Media fireworks show is one.
Yeah. Hey, before we go, a Senate panel targets President Obama's executive actions. They're not, if they're not consistent with federal and state constitution, not recognized by this. I think we've talked about this one before too. Basically, again, states' rights kind of stuff.
States' rights stuff, basically concern, it stems from, some of the executive orders Obama has done related to immigration specifically. There was some concern that popped back up as we talked about handgun rights, stuff like that. And basically it's saying that, if it's not something that Congress has voted on and somebody thinks it might be unconstitutional, then Arizona can't spend any money or resources on it.
But here's the funny thing. This is already law. Sheriff Mack from Graham County took a case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court when they first started handgun checks. And he got the U.S. Supreme Court to rule that you cannot commandeer a local official to use his or her resources to promote federal law. It's already law, but yet we've got 6, 7, 8 bills out there that say you can't commandeer our resources.
Sure, it's really part of a narrative about the president being illegitimate in his powers and stuff. But just imagine if Obama had a fireworks executive order, what would we do?
Oh my goodness gracious!
But he's not legitimate. He's from Kenya.
All right. With that, we will stop. By the way, I'm trying to figure out, inconsistent with the Constitution, says who, not recognized by the state, says who decides this stuff?
Well, as the lawyers pointed out, excuse me, that's what the courts do, but somehow the legislature can overrule the courts in this
That used to be the
scenario.
Supreme Court, I thought.
Okay, all right. Guys, thank you very much. Good to have you here. Monday on Arizona Horizon, we will look at the state of Arizona's water infrastructure, and we'll learn about the benefits of dual language programs for Valley students. That's Monday on Arizona Horizon. Tuesday, a comprehensive look at the problem of heroin abuse in the state. Wednesday, Senate President Andy Biggs joins us in studio. Thursday, we'll learn about plant foraging in Arizona. Mike's big on that one. And Friday, it's another edition of the Journalists Roundtable. That is it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your PBS station. Thank you.